Alright, so we're back once again, and today we're going to be going over 5 of the biggest mistakes made by players in World of Warships. These are mistakes I see basically every game, and are some of, if not the majority of the reason, as to why people can't improve at the game. Some of these might seem fairly obvious, and some might not be all that obvious, but I think overall everyone has been guilty of at least one of these problems at some point playing the game. And as always, if you enjoy this kind of content, you can always subscribe. It's not needed, but it helps a lot. But with that, let's get into the reasons. Not being able to aim correctly. This is a big one, and is perhaps the biggest reason why people suck so hard and have such low PR ratings. Not being able to aim correctly can single-handedly lose you and your team the game without you even knowing it. Let's say you have a player on your team who goes by the name of someone who can't aim good. Let's say they're playing the Yamato, and they spot a juicy Hindenburg sitting at around 15 kilometers, showing nothing but full broadside to their already turned guns. They have their sight lined up at the waterline of the enemy Hindenburg, ready to get those 6 citadels and post a screenshot on Reddit. All they have to do is hit the thing. So how much lead do you think they give the Hindenburg? Is it A, aim straight under the gun turrets because that's where the citadel is located? B, give enough to match the time that is shown on the indicator because that's how long it takes the shells to reach that distance? C, just guess because they don't know what leading the ship means? Or D, doesn't shoot at all because they're afraid of the Hindenburg's torpedoes and they're trying to go undetected? If you've answered anything other than B, then I'm sorry to tell you, but you're one of these players. But don't worry, there is a way to improve. Turn on the indicator in the settings and then appropriately lead your shots, and you'll actually be able to post your screenshots of how good you play and how you're such a super unicom, and not discussion threads about how RNG is constantly against you. On to the next point. Not being able to position correctly. This is another big one, and is honestly on the same tier as not being able to aim correctly. The only difference being is that your team will be able to tell who the noob is a lot sooner than if you can't aim correctly, as you'll be dead within the first 5 minutes of the game, or the first 3 minutes if you're playing a destroyer. Now, that being said, here's a quick breakdown on how to position. If you're a battleship, just sit central mostly, and don't push too far in. You have the range, use it. If you're a cruiser, use the islands to your advantage. Remember, you are not a destroyer or battleship. You can't show broadside to anything. Well, unless you're Russian. If you're a destroyer, just stay alive for the first 5 minutes of the game, and you'll already be ahead of 90% of the people who play destroyers. Oh, and there's one more class here. Here's a quick tip if you play that class. Really useful and helped me so much in the game. But seriously, however, positioning is so important and really shouldn't be neglected. And if you want to actually become decent at the game, significant amount of time in the game should be spent constantly asking yourself, why are you positioned the way you currently are? And if you can't answer that why question, then you probably have much more to learn, and you probably shouldn't be in that position in the first place. Let's move on to the next point. Pushing while you're in a winning position. This is perhaps more of a team mistake than an individual mistake, but as individuals make up teams, I'm going to include it here. So often, when either the enemy team is winning it in a winning position, or if your own team is in a winning position, people decide the best thing they can do is push the enemy team, kill their remaining ships, and end the game 5 minutes earlier, and then happily go into the next game with a smug satisfaction that they were clearly better than the enemy team. In reality, what happens is this: you kill a few ships on the flank, and when I say basically a few ships, I mean 2 or 3, then something clicks in your brain that makes you push that W key 5 times in a row, and you go full steam ahead, straight into the enemy. You're going to crush them. I mean, you're up in ships, what could possibly go wrong? But what you don't realise is that while you're going full speed pushing, the other side of the map slowly starts getting a better and better crossfire. And while you push, the enemy ships on the other side of the map just have to left click a couple of times. And what ends up happening is that you go from having a 2 or 3 ship advantage, 2 or 3 ship disadvantage, all in the space of, you guessed it, 2 to 3 minutes. Now, this mistake is very simple to fix. Here's what you do. You push forward to get into your initial position using the W key, then you proceed to pull that key off your keyboard for the remaining minutes of the game. There's almost no reason to ever push further forward after the initial push at the start of the game, especially if you're in a battleship. If you kill a few of their ships early, great, just sit there and try to kill the remaining ones. If you lose a few ships early from that position, then just reverse. But seriously, if you're actually in a winning position, try to take it easy and just realize what you could be walking into. I think I've said enough about this, but it definitely is a very important point that you need to keep in mind the next time you play games, because so many people and teams make this mistake consistently. So let's move on to the next point. Pressure decisions. Now, pressure decisions can fall under many categories, and we're going to discuss a few of them here right now. The first of which being the infamous torpedo turn. We've all been in that position, steaming full power, just shooting anything that moves, while a destroyer has just sent 15 torpedoes straight in your direction, and unfortunately you see them at 1.5 kilometers. So let's do another little test. Do you A, turn away from the torps, hoping to angle just enough to avoid the majority of them hitting you? B. Keep pushing in a straight line hoping you'll outrun the torpedoes and make it to safety. C. Turn in and try to go bow in towards the torpedoes and try not to hit too many. Or D. Go into reverse and pray you don't get dev struck. If you said anything other than C, then you probably react badly when under pressure in World of Warships. Another situation that people tend to react badly to is when they push just that little bit too far in, and as a result they're getting damaged from 3 different cruisers, 2 battleships and the carrier. They decide, in their infinite wisdom, I'm going to die anyways, so what difference does it make? I may as well just do as much damage as possible and try to escape before I go down. And they proceed to try and get out of that situation by panicking, going full power and trying to turn out. While in reality all they needed to do was go into reverse in order to create distance, stop shooting to go undetected, and then make the turn out so they can completely escape the enemy team and not die as a result of one bad decision. But oftentimes people panic so quickly, this doesn't happen, and they tend to die a lot more often than they need to. Something that really helped me in these situations is being constantly looking at the minimap. It helps to draw your attention away from the flashy lights of the shells in the air, all the ships looking at you, and the carrier planes, the fires or floodings on your ship, and can help focus you in those very stressful situations. And also it's really just a really good idea in general to be constantly looking at your minimap, to know what's actually happening over the entirety of the map. But that's enough said about that. Let's move on to the 5th and final point, and probably one of the most hilarious but also strange points: following the lemming train. This one is fairly self-explanatory, but it's still a phenomenon that's worth commenting on. It's strange, the first few times I saw this happening I just thought it was a well thought out strategy that the game forced upon you. Then I thought it was divisions that were really good at the game and had a specific plan about how to play and knew what they were doing. And then the penny finally dropped. I finally discovered that an actual fact is that it's players who thought the best way they could position themselves on the map is sailing full broadside to the edge of the map with their full broadside in show until they reach either one of 2 scenarios. The whole team gets stuck in a single square on the map, and as a result, anyone with a pulse on the enemy team hits them and they get focus fired and die fairly quickly, thus ending the game in the space of 5 to 10 minutes. This kind of ties into the fact with people not knowing how to position, the game kind of ends in the first 10 minutes. Yeah, those 2 things are very interlinked. Or the other thing that happens is that the team basically sails to the edge of the map, all while eating citadels, only to reach the edge of the map, turn around and sail in the opposite direction to the other edge of the map until they either outdamage the enemy team and win, or eat so much damage they end up dying as a result. This is usually the result, not the winning part. If you find yourself following the LEMMINGTRAIN Express, try to think and stop before it goes too far, and you too end up at the edge of the map being forced to turn into an invisible wall while looking like someone who just reached tier 10 for the first time. But in a serious note, generally try to stay as close as possible to the center of the map. Oftentimes this works best when trying to avoid the dreaded lemming train. It also puts you in a really good position to help either flank that could be under pressure at any point in the game, which is always nice. And again, probably just to wrap this all together, you need to be able to think ahead. That's probably the best advice I can give you, because if you sit central, if you sit a little bit back, you can always react to something happening on the map. If you push forward or you push a certain flank, you're committed to that flank from the very second you decide to push. So sitting central, sitting a little bit back, maybe playing a bit more passive, allows you that time to think and doesn't actually stress you out all that much. So in general, you'll be able to make a much better decision. And as a result, you become a much better player too, because you'll actually be thinking and not just following. So that was my biggest mistakes in World of Warships. This was a much more kind of tongue-in-cheek video, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, you can give it a like. If you didn't, you can dislike it. And as always, if you enjoy this content, you can subscribe. But until next time, I'll see you in the next one.